Welcome everyone! In today's tutorial we'll create a dynamic diorama inspired by my favorite horror movie, Cabin in the Woods. And I'll recreate the most iconic scene of the movie, where the characters find themselves trapped in a structure of cubes, each representing a different horror scenario. As usual, I designed the project in 3D with Blender, and I brought to life 12 characters, 8 of which are of my own design, as they are unique to this movie. Each character is a project on its own, but due to time constraints, I will focus just on a few of them. Aside from designing so many characters, another big challenge was the engineering. In the movie, the cubes could move in all directions, changing the position of their monstrous inhabitants. Okay, they clearly levitate, but I decided to build cubes that could shift in all 3 axes anyway. And to elevate the project even further, I incorporate lights in each cube. In the video you'll find the Fool and the Virgin, the Werewolf, the Ballet Dancer, the Lord of Pain, the Ghost, the Vampire, the Clown, the Spider, the Gigantic Snake, the Evil Twins, and of course the stronger of them all.
Oh, come on!
But now, enough talking and let's start. I designed all the models in Blender and printed them using a filament 3D printer. Filament printers thrive for large-scale projects but have limitation in achieving the same level of details as resin printers. In order to have a good resolution, I decided to go for a large scale. I painted the highlights of the clothes with an airbrush. And I used a fine brush to accentuate the edges. Using a red wash, I marked skin sores and wounds. I had a chain with rings of the right size, but made with copper. Instead of painting it, I decided to use a metal blackener to preserve the characteristics of the metal. To close the linking rings, I used small pliers. To make the studs, I used tiny fishing leads. To glue them in place, I had to cut them in half. I started with a grey-blue base. I made the highlights with a lighter blue, and I added some stripes using a very diluted violet tint. To make the eyes more fishy, I added a hint of yellow. And of course some blood between those sharky teeth. I painted the dorsal spines in the fins and then covered most of the work with the airbrush. To make the merman look wet, I covered it with a glossy paste. I painted in white a lead to blend it with the color of the ghost. I printed the ghost with transparent filament, and to simulate ectoplasm I used transparent silicone. The goal was to both hide the lead and diffuse the light. For the snake I decided to go for a rattlesnake look. I painted the base in light brown and the highlights in ochre. So far it looks like a giant poop. I cut some pieces of transparent rubber and drilled holes of 4 different sizes, and used them to mask the skin of the snake. A polka dot snake is better than a poop one, but still not very convincing. So I extended the edges of the circles to the nearest scales, using a slightly darker tone of brown. Now the big question: how to make cubes that could shift in a 3D space? The inspiration came from 2D sliding puzzles. So I started by designing tiles that could slide along 2 axes. But how about the third? Well, I just mounted pistons on the back of the cubes that would let them move back and forth. I started by cutting squares of 2.5mm plexiglass, 66 of them, 6 per cube. As light source I used neon wire. A nightmare, since the 2 poles were the size of a hair. I then glued it to the perimeter of the front window. To attach the pistons, I used epoxy glue. I threaded the guides onto steel screw holders and inserted the section of the frames into the guides. To insert the 2 top tiles, I had to leave a gap in the top. I spread grease on the edges of the tiles to reduce the friction. I tightened the horizontal frame with bolts. And to increase the stability, I added 2 supports in the front. I finally tightened the vertical frame with bolts too. Okay, they move smoothly. Good job. Due to the freedom of movement along the two axes for all the cubes, it was necessary to furnish individual electrical supply sources. I crafted a battery support from MDF, opting for a heavy but easy to work material to offset the weight of the cubes. Time to put everything in place. For the neon lights I employed standard AAA batteries, while the LEDs required 12 volts, but I decided to go for 9-volt batteries. To avoid overcrowding the scene, I decided to exclude 2 of the 11 monsters. If this project tickled your curiosity or left you with a nugget of inspiration, show your love with a thumbs up and subscribe for further videos.